You've been hunting for a setup that actually lives up to the hype, something that plays your vinyl the way it was meant to sound, fills the room without sounding like a club, and doesn't force you to become a wiring expert just to get it working. That tension between wanting high-end performance and staying practical is why a lot of people end up buying a cheap pair of bookshelf speakers and a generic receiver, only to discover the sound feels flat and the bass is missing the weight they expected from their favorite records. The fear of splurging on a bundle that looks great on paper but ends up being a headache in the living room is real, especially when you've already invested in a decent turntable or are planning to upgrade soon. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Denon DRA 900H plus the Polk XT70 tower speakers, XT12 subwoofer, and DP300F turntable bundle tries to answer that exact dilemma. It's positioned as an all-in-one analog hi-fi solution, promising 100 watts per channel from the receiver, high-resolution certification from Polk, and a fully automatic turntable that takes the guesswork out of speed and tracking. But does the package deliver a consistently good listening experience, or does it hide compromises that only become obvious after the first few spins? First, let's talk about the real-world setup. You pull the box out of the cardboard, and everything is already labeled: the receiver, 2 tower speakers, the sub, the turntable, and 3 cables from Amazon Basics. The receiver's rear panel is clean, with clear inputs for the turntable, a dedicated phono preamp built in, and a pair of RCA outputs for the speakers. The Polk XT70 towers are surprisingly heavy for their size, each weighing about 30 pounds. And they come with a set of pre-cut speaker wire that's long enough to run from the receiver to a typical sofa-centered listening spot. Plug the sub into the dedicated sub-out, connect the turntable's RCA cable into the phono input, and you're basically done. No need to hunt for extra adapters or worry about impedance matching, everything is matched to work together out of the box. For someone who has been listening through a TV's built-in speakers or a budget soundbar, the first thing you'll notice is the sheer difference in imaging. The Polk XT70 towers are designed for high-resolution audio, and they actually hold up when you play a well-mastered vinyl record like Miles Davis's Kind of Blue. The mid-range comes through clear and warm, and you can pick out the subtle brushwork on the drums that you never heard before. The XT12 sub adds a depth that is often missing from smaller systems. The low end isn't just a rumble, it's a controlled, musical bass that gives the upright bass on a jazz record a real body. In a practical sense, this means you can finally enjoy your collection without needing to crank the volume to hear the nuances, which is a huge win for apartment living where you don't want to disturb the neighbors. Now, let's weigh the strengths against the everyday compromises. One practical advantage is the automatic speed selection on the DP300F turntable. It reads the 33 revolutions per minute or 45 revolutions per minute label on the record and adjusts itself, which eliminates the occasional wrong speed mistake that can ruin a listening session. The built-in phono equalizer is calibrated to the RIAA curve, so you don't have to buy an external preamp. The receiver's network features, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, let you stream a digital playlist between vinyl sessions, so you're not forced into a purely analog lifestyle. The 100 watts per channel is more than enough to drive the XT70S to a comfortable listening level without distortion, even in a medium-sized living room. On the downside, the bundle's power isn't unlimited. While 100 watts per channel sounds generous, the XT70S are relatively efficient but still benefit from a higher power margin if you plan to fill a large open-plan space. In a room larger than about 300 square feet, you may find you need to push the volume close to the receiver's max to get the same presence you'd get in a smaller space, and at that point the sound can start to feel a bit compressed. The subwoofer, while solid, doesn't have a dedicated low-pass crossover control on the receiver. You have to rely on the receiver's preset subsettings, which can be a little blunt if you want fine-tuned bass integration. Users who are picky about the exact balance between the towers and the sub may spend a few minutes dialing in the sub-level and phase switch, but it's not a deal-breaker for most listeners. Another practical consideration is the cable management. The Amazon Basics speaker cables are 16 gauge, which is adequate for the distance most people have in a typical living room, but they're not the thickest, premium-grade cables you'd see in a high-end audiophile setup. If you have a particularly long run, say, you're placing the receiver in a media cabinet across the room, you might notice a slight loss in clarity at the very highest frequencies. This isn't a catastrophic issue, but it's something to